I really can't get across enough how refreshing and affirming this felt to me and almost every dude I knew at the time. Finally, we had an avatar, an icon that really represented who we actually were. Kanye had used his personal tragedy to manufacture his own push. And Kanye had went from the potential baby face that people liked on the low to the face of the game, the champion, the main eventer, the headliner. And for the next few years, he would have a run that probably would never be repeated. For almost a decade now, Kanye West has been one of music's most bothersome and mercurial figures. The ongoing investment that many people, myself included, have with Kanye and his ongoing struggle with mental health and public spectacle, I get it. The question, though, I've seen more than a few times is, why are y'all still even checking for Kanye? And I gotta be honest, when I hear that question, it bothers me because I really don't think it comes from a place of actually caring about the answer. It doesn't really give grace to those for whom Kanye, especially old Kanye, holds a really significant place in our identities and experiences. One friend I have who is my age made the statement that Black folks, especially Black men around my age, are in a toxic relationship with Kanye West. We have so much history and affection for a time period and a person who is no longer around that we are continuing to invest and stay emotionally connected in someone who is constantly causing us harm. But in between those pain points and moments of objectively bad and embarrassing behavior, they show us enough to keep a glimmer of hope alive that maybe the person we loved and connected to can return. That hit me hard because it's incredibly true, but I feel like a lot of people don't fully get how this came to be, how a generation of people, specifically in my case, cishet Black men, developed a deep connection to Kanye West, and not just his music, but who he was to the culture and hip hop and Black masculinity as a whole. I think now, 20 years into his time in the spotlight, that we don't fully grasp just how big of an impact he's had. And we undersell just how bonded he is to a generation of Black men to whom he spoke to and spoke for in a way that we didn't even really know was possible at the time, to the point where now, 10 years deep into this spiral of crises and public blowups and embarrassing moments and outright offensive statements and acts, we are still listening to his music and paying attention to what he does, not because we enjoy it or definitely not because we condone his behavior, because greatly we are looking for signs of him getting better, searching for glimmers of hope that he still remembers or is connected to the person he was in the early 2000s, seeing if by some miracle we can get back the old Kanye.
He's like, he's doing his face like that. Then he's like, play the next beat, play the next beat. I played another beat. Listen to it like, yo, man, you a soulful dude. And everything that Hov is saying is like in stone. Like, I will never forget none of these words because I'm off the train. I'm from Chicago. I got $10 in my pocket right now, and I'm just having the opportunity to play these beats. So you know what I'm saying? I've had different so-called hit records and everything up to that point, but at this point, it's like this is like the moment of truth for me right here.
To make sense of that and to process my own place in this discourse, I think we need to fully understand just who was old Kanye and exactly what his impact on people and hip hop and culture, and especially the way Black men showed up in society after he came into prominence. And to do that, I'm actually going to take a surprising turn. I'm going to talk about one of my other semi-problematic influences that I've loved since my youth, professional wrestling. 9 times out of 10, when I reveal to a non-wrestling fan that I still watch wrestling, I get some form of the following response. You do know it's fake, right? So let me go ahead and put this to bed for the non-fans in the audience. For the last 30 or 40 years, nobody, even the small children, believes wrestling is real. Stop saying this to people when they tell you they watch wrestling. It's like telling people the Avengers isn't real. We know. What we believe in and appreciate is called kayfabe. The fantasy world that wrestling provides for us, the world it tells its story in, the world and state of mind you enter when watching wrestling, that's called kayfabe. Kayfabe houses the actors who play characters who are more real than Tom Holland as Spider-Man, because unlike when watching Tom Holland as Spider-Man, Stone Cold Steve Austin can directly talk to me during the show.
I said, you understand me? Don't trip on my damn belt. That's a World Wrestling Federation Championship belt. Do you understand me? Do I make myself clear? You're about to jump off that stage, ain't you, boy? You can jump off. That's about an $80,000 camera, so don't you dare break that son of a bitch. You understand me? That's right.
So if you allow yourself to let go of the absurdity of it all, it's kind of amazing. And yes, I am saying wrestling is absurd. I'm not calling it high art, but it is art. It's basically a live theater experience, except with violence and acrobatics and spectacle. The kayfabe is the agreement between the performers and the audience that we are participating in an entertainment experience and being entertained in this unique way. We treat the action as real as to maximize its ability to entertain us. So wrestling isn't real, but kayfabe is. One good thing about wrestling now compared to years prior is that the wrestlers get to break kayfabe when necessary. 30, 40 years ago, when the realness of wrestling was more in question, wrestlers felt the need to be in character at all times. And though there are some purists who still do this, for the most part, modern day wrestlers and wrestling fans understand that when the light goes off and the show is over, these guys who play these characters get to return to their own personhood and separate from the characters that they embody. I bring this up because the concept of kayfabe, I think, is really useful for describing the liminal space that hip hop was in before Kanye came on the scene.
There's a war going on outside, no man is safe from. You can run, but you can't out forever.
There's a whole history of hip hop video that I have in my head that I'm gonna do eventually once that sponsorship money kicks in, because it's already gonna be hard enough to do this video with no Kanye music in it. I am stopping myself from stopping the video right now just because I know that talking about Kanye without being able to use the music, we'll see. We'll see how this works out. For now, the key thing I need you to get is that at an early point in hip hop's history, it was very much an organic and underground movement that came from the Black American experience. Then at a certain point, many point to the explosion of gangster rap in the late 80s, the music industry and the associated corporate and capitalist interests realized that hip hop had huge potential as a marketing aesthetic, that white youth and inner city youth both wanted to embody and consume the brazen and bold images of young Black men living on the edge. Much like America has always loved the hyper-masculine outlaw character. The imagery from the Westerns to James Bond to Johnny Cash to Elvis, hip-hop was just the new version of that. It was the new rock and roll. So the same way little kids wanted to be like Hulk Hogan, young people, especially young white folks, wanted to be Eazy-E and eventually Snoop Dogg and Tupac, etc. However, to make this work and to maximize profits, rappers had to keep up kayfabe. They couldn't let the fans know that they weren't really killers, gangsters, and drug dealers when the songs go off. This may sound silly now, but just understand these rappers played these characters to a T to make sure that their fan base truly bought into the persona that they were being sold.
Rappers, for the most part, rappers are not millionaires. They have this bar, this sort of expectation that's been set extremely high, and it's unrealistic. There are very few Jay-Z's, very few Eminems.
Frequently, the person that you see bling-blinging doesn't have as much money as he would like other people to think.
They kept kayfabe way better than any wrestler. They had to present the image that their edgy street personas were real, even though most of them weren't. The vast majority of truly successful gangster rappers are not who they pretend to be. Even back in my day, most of the rappers with their gangster lyrics and violent stories were at best them observing the real lives of other people that they then portrayed on record. And at worst, they were just outright imposters. Hence the hip hop to Hollywood actor pipeline that existed since the 90s. Like, NWA is a perfect example, as the members of NWA, despite being the most dangerous rap group of all time, most of those dudes weren't really on the streets like that. Eazy-E was the only one ever really involved in criminal activity, and he was just a low-level drug dealer. The rest of them were just street adjacent. Ice Cube even went to college for a while. But when you look at the images of NWA, what you see is a savvy marketing scheme where young black men and their label execs recognize how to package and sell black masculine fantasy to a white audience. Like, NWA wore all black and looked the way that white America thought a street gang would look. But if you know anything about the streets, especially back then, the fashion wasn't that damn impeccable and coordinated at the time. Not if you was really in the streets. And this is not to say that these dudes don't have street cred, because many of them are from rough neighborhoods. It's that there's a big gap between what they are and what they present. Kayfabe. And so from the late to mid 80s until the 2000s, this was the kayfabe of black men in pop culture. We were all trying to emulate this as best as possible, this image of black masculinity, for better or for worse. Better because it did feel kind of cool. There was something awesome about the idea that, like, people automatically associated who you were with being cool. Black men and black masculinity got over some of the dumbest trends in pop culture, and everyone went with it for a good 20, 30 years because we said that was the cool thing to do. And entire industries were built around fashion, cars, jewelry. Whatever black men said was the thing to do, y'all did. But the drawback is that it was all kayfabe, and that really meant that there were side effects for a lot of black men and boys who weren't able to show up in the world as they really were. With regular everyday boys and young men presenting that bravado and machismo of a DMX or a Nas or Puff Daddy or Tretch from Naughty by Nature or whatever, it was a heavy lift. The world still expected that energy from you regardless to what space you actually occupied. I don't care what you look like or where you came from. As a black man, even if you looked like Steve Urkel and talked like Carlton Banks, other folks would assume that somewhere deep inside, you were really 50 Cent. It wasn't a fun time. What I'm getting at is that due to the kayfabe of hip hop, the absence of understanding that none of this was real, that this was a farce that we all participated in for the sake of entertainment and just maintaining the facade, there is a generation of black men being assigned a persona that didn't fit them. In the 90s, in the formative years of my life as a relatively middle-class black kid in a mostly black but relatively mixed environment, I often felt insecure in the way I presented to the world because I did not have that bravado. In fact, most of the boys I knew didn't have that energy. We were all still insecure, still trying to make sense of the world that we existed in, but also feeling like as we were trying to figure this out, everyone else had already decided for us exactly who we were. There was no T'Challa, no Miles Morales, not a lot of representation that felt right for a boy like myself, just ballers and athletes and thugs. In pop culture, that was pretty much it until I hit college. I'm reminded of the concept of the double consciousness entered into discourse by sociologist W.E.B. Du Bois. The Negro is a sort of seventh son, born with a veil and gifted with a second sight in this American world, a world which yields him no true self-consciousness, but only lets him see himself through the revelation of the other world. It is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. One ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro. Two souls, two thought, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body whose dogged strength alone keeps him from being torn asunder. Still to this day, to be a black man in America is to exist in a constant state of cognitive dissonance. As Du Bois alludes to, you are always managing the way you present to the world, picking and choosing when you maybe can break kayfabe. And this, of course, isn't all black men. There were many black men that didn't struggle with this. And there are also plenty of non-black men who can relate. But specifically for black men, this experience of being depersonalized and coded with a set of features, many of them completely unrealistic to who you were, it takes a toll. And then my sophomore year of college started, and we started hearing about some kid named Kanye West.
This can't be life. It can't be life that I'm sitting right here, right now. Because back when I was in 7th grade, I wouldn't have ever fathomed really being on this side of the screen. Hey mama, this is my first Grammy Award winning record right here. Well, it hasn't won a Grammy yet, but just keep this on file.
He was the whiz kid from my hometown that produced a bunch of tracks off the Blueprint and was signed to Rockefeller, where he was doing beats for Jay-Z and Benny Siegel and Cameron and the others. He had this thing we came to call soul beats that really hit different, especially in an era of hip hop where all the mainstream rap was big bombastic horns and blasted out synth and piano licks. Kanye instead was taking samples from old soul songs and drowning out the bass with crisp snares and doing something very different.
Guess who's Bizak? You still smell a crack in my clothes. Don't make me have to relapse on these hoes. Take it back out the tax in the road when I was hugging it.
And there were rumors he rapped too, that he was going to change the game when he got out. But then you saw him in a magazine or these early vlogs we had in the 2000s, and is that a fucking teddy bear on his shirt? Now, don't get me wrong. Guys like Common and Mos Def were respected rappers in the time before Kanye, along with acts like PM Dawn and De La Soul and Arrested Development from earlier eras. But in terms of superstardom and being at the top spot at the forefront of hip hop, you had to be hard. You had to have edge. You had to seem dangerous. Those other rappers were basically in a different genre at the time. This was not Kanye West. Kanye West was born to Ray and Donda West in 1977, two college-educated black folks with advanced degrees. Kanye's parents split when he was little, but he remained close to his father and did not have the stereotypical child of a single mother experience. Kanye grew up like a lot of black men he would later become an icon to. He didn't see and experience the elements of poverty and strife that shaped how the world understood and viewed black masculinity. His mother introduced him to art early, and he even lived in China for a year and attended mostly exclusive art and prep schools growing up. I imagine that being a black boy who was artistic and sensitive and expressive, that things weren't easy for Kanye growing up, and that he was extremely close to his mom because she was probably the few people that really understood him and accepted him for who he is and didn't try to force into him a performance of black masculinity that was more acceptable and appropriate for the world he lived in. Donda West supported Kanye even after he dropped out of college to pursue music, helping to pay for studio sessions and even helping him get an apartment in New York where he would shop his demo around and find work making beats. Along with famed Chicago producer No Idea as his mentor, Kanye eventually landed a now legendary listening session with Dame Dash and Jay-Z. Impressed the duo with his production skills, but not so much his rapping skills. And you can see like the interview he does where he talks about how in the middle of accomplishing his dream, he pauses for a second to call his mom.
He was about to leave out the room. He had played the songs. He's like, yo, after this song, Guru, I'm going to the lounge. I was like, yo, I got one beat to play. I gotta play you this beat. So I put it on. Then he just started bobbing his head to it. Like, let me give you one of them looks like, that's how you know you got a heat rock. Let me give you that right there. So I went to the bathroom, right? I called my mom and said, Mom, we about to make it. We really gonna make it this time. It's about to be on now. So then.
This was a huge deal. Rockefeller Records at the time was the biggest and most prominent record company in all of hip hop. In the wake of both Bad Boy and Death Row losing their biggest acts in the mid-90s, by the late 90s, Jay-Z had taken over as the biggest rapper in the game and had carried Rockefeller Records to crossover success and was defining hip hop in a new era as an artist and a crew with the people I mentioned before, Benny Siegel, Cameron, and a bunch of other acts who are not really worth remembering. All of these acts were deeply invested in black masculine kayfabe, except Benny Siegel. Bings was a legit goon.
Well, I know I'm not qualified to speak on this, but you can understand how some people don't think what you're doing is all the way solid.
You might not think that, and you're not qualified, dog. You're a rated personality, man.
That is
you
a
don't
fact.
come from my world, man.
Nah, I don't.
Yeah, stop running your fucking mouth, man.
And I don't want
Stop running your fucking mouth. You shouldn't. It's dangerous. You know nothing about that, man.
No.
You sit up here and your job is to play games. Play with something safe, man. Don't play with me.
And this is all with Jay-Z as the leading act, the main eventer, and Dame Dash, the business mind, doing his dance in the background. Almost never seen during all of this glory of Rockefeller in this time period was Kanye West. Unlike many artists that came on Rockefeller and came and flopped, you seldom saw Kanye in anything until he became a star. And I know like you didn't see Just Blaze in videos, but like Kanye wanted to rap and they definitely kept him in the background.
I can't say we were eager to sign him.
People had him in a box as just being a producer.
I didn't pay attention to him rapping. You know, I didn't think that he was built to be a rapper. I thought he was built to be a producer.
We just wanted some hot beats at the time, to be honest with you.
It's clear that the decision makers at Rockefeller Records, aka Jay-Z and Dame Dash, didn't have confidence in Kanye being able to grab hold of the culture, as he was just very different from not just the acts on their label and their brand, but most major rap artists at the time, which is why they put everyone they could out before giving Kanye a shot. Worse yet, they had Kanye steadily making beats for Rockefeller. Kanye just had to sit and wait, believing that when he got his shot, there'd be no denying him. And even at this stage, if you're paying attention, even when Kanye was younger and nicer and less confident, it was clear that he was very thirsty for the spotlight. He didn't want to sit behind anyone else. He thought he'd be bigger than all these guys still performing under kayfabe.
This ain't no fucking game for me. I don't give a fuck about a nigga trying to classify me as a producer. My beats was whack at one point, dog. I wasn't always having hot beats. I learned how to make hot beats. I'm focusing on rhyming now. I'm gonna be the fucking best. And I'm be charting with these niggas.
So basically, Kanye was an up-and-coming babyface. Returning to wrestling for a moment. Because wrestling matches are loosely scripted with the end results planned, winning and losing is based on telling the best stories, and the best stories are told with characters and performers who are able to appeal the most and get the most out of the crowd. Thus, you have the ever-present dynamic of good versus evil because it's easy to get the biggest crowds to buy in to that classic story. In wrestling terms, a good guy is called a babyface or a face, and a bad guy is called a heel. For now, I want to focus on what makes a babyface. The babyface has to be someone the crowd wants to root for. Sometimes it will just be because the babyface is so unbelievably awesome in their look and presence that you cheer for them out of sheer excitement for seeing them perform their cool and best action in the ring. And sometimes they might just have a natural underdog quality that makes you want to see them win, which is even more effective when they're faced with difficult challenges such as a powerful, hated, and established heel. In that last category is where I think we get some of wrestling's best moments, because it appeals to a spirit in all of us that wants the underdog to win. The smart fans in wrestling can always see a potential babyface star when they appear. There's that look and that genuine quality of eagerness and heart. We know that if the right story is told, if the right match is booked, we might get a great moment out of it with the right planning and a bit of luck. And even if the writers and decision makers don't believe in you, even if they don't try to push you forward, if you keep grinding and take advantage of the right opportunity at the right time, you might get such a buzz with the audience that the people over you will have no choice but to give the audience what they want. And at the time, Kanye was trying to make this happen. He was floundering behind the scenes at Rockefeller, but still taking meetings over and over again, trying to get signed as a rapper, as an artist, and not just a guy that made dope soul beats. But it didn't seem like the rock or other hip hop labels would have it. Kanye refused to do kayfabe. He couldn't do it. Kanye appeared in a few songs, gained traction with the conscious rap crowd, but really didn't find a way to stand out as a future star. The fans were interested, but the industry just didn't see it. But then a miracle of sorts happens.
Accident is God saying, I'm about to hand you the world, because I had a lot of good records, slow jams, Jesus walks already in the pipeline. So he's like, I'm about to hand you the world. just know at any given time I could take it away from you. To nearly lose your life, to nearly lose your mouth, your voice as a career as a rapper, your face. You know, I had to be on TV. My face looks crazy to me now. Y'all probably look at it and think it's normal, but I feel very self-conscious about certain things. Look how my mouth, like, it looks like you can't even see my bottom teeth when I talk. But I have to just thank God for the situation that I'm in. You know, it's like we turned the worst thing into the best thing. Through the wire, it seemed like it was the worst thing that could have possibly happened to me, and now it's obviously the best thing. Look how it exploded. And it made people care. It made people realize that I was a human being.
Kanye ended up in a head-on collision after leaving a recording session at 3 o'clock in the morning. He needed reconstructive surgery as the right side of his jaw was shattered. And while in bed with his jaw still wired shut, he recorded The Wire, which would be his first solo song to finally break into the music charts.
Yo, G, they can't stop me from rapping, can they? Can they hop?
It was the Jeff Hardy raising his hand moment for most hip-hop fans, where we got our first glimpse into how Kanye was different. The song isn't anything spectacular lyrically, but it was the first time that Kanye would truly blur his personal life and who he was with his art. At the time, like, a rapper's first song or appearance was usually their chance to truly intensely announce their presence in kayfabe, that they were the new, invincible, hyper-masculine force in hip-hop, and they were here to command your attention with their unbridled intensity and lyrical wordplay and street credibility and everything. But here's Kanye rapping from a hospital bed after almost dying. Not in a gun battle, but a car accident because he fell asleep at the wheel. There's not a ton of punchlines or crazy bars, but hearing Kanye rap about his second chance and fighting for his life and how his mother's praying for him and how he's gonna marry his girlfriend once he gets back on his feet, all literally through the wires holding his jaw together, it's shonen anime energy. It's like, how can you not root for someone when they have this much fight in them after they've been set back for so long? And so this raised his profile a bit, and he was finally starting to get a little more attention as an artist, which eventually led to Rockefeller signing him in order to keep him in-house, even though they still didn't really believe in him fully. But as The Wire gained traction and hit, and he released a mixtape and went from being known as a dope producer in hardcore rap fans to being a future possible megastar, and then you get co-signs to Mos Def and to Lil Kweli, that really helped. And even though Jay-Z and Dame Dash are pretty much treating him like little brother, thankfully the hardcore fans and underground appeal led to more mainstream attention. Remember, this is the early 2000s. We didn't even have MySpace yet. So you had to rely on MTV and BET and other media outlets letting us know who we're supposed to like. And suddenly Kanye was on the menu, but it still seemed like Rockefeller Records were dragging their feet.
Once he knocked out Through the Wire, he was ready to go. He definitely felt like, I'm ready to drop this album.
The label was not ready to move at the speed Kanye was moving.
The label told him that'll never work, that'll never sell.
They still didn't believe, and they weren't ready to jump behind the project.
But in a year or so, The College Dropout dropped with a lot of hype as several tracks leaked in the process, and you heard future classics like Slow Jams and All Falls Down and Jesus Walks, which foreshadowed Kanye's desire to blend spirituality into secular music. And just like that, the game changed. The babyface underdog was now poised to be the top star in all of music. We are now entering the Kanye era, and nothing was going to be the same after this.
Tonight's musical guests, two of Chicago's finest MCs. Give it up for Common and Kanye West.
Kind of knew it was you before you let the window down. I was like, that's open right there. And you started just asking me regular questions about the car. And I'm like, okay, it drives cool, I just got it, but I want to be on your show one day.
And the winner is Kanye West.
This is one of the best things that has ever happened to me. And I mean,
it sounded like it hurt when he rapped. That's how it was to me. I'm like, damn, that's how you know how much this guy wants to be an artist.
College Dropout was just straight like dope.
Oh man, it was outrageous. It was outrageous. It was a groundbreaking, critically acclaimed album from the beginning.
His first week of release, he was certified gold.
I just love y'all. I mean, I just gotta savor this moment in time, man. Thank you.
I'ma bring the cool whip. Then I want you to strip. See you as my new chick. So we get
been nominated for. Who is it that you would like to say, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so?
Oh, man, the list is so long, I don't know where to start.
No, you weren't supposed to speak from the heart when you got an interview, so I made that mistake, and I actually spoke from the heart, and then a lot of people say, he seems kind of cocky, he seems kind of arrogant, because I'll be mad because so many people diss me, and then like I sold all these records, so I was just like a sore winner. So, you know, I just apologize to everybody for, you know, keeping it so real.
The Grammy goes to the college dropout, Kanye West.
The College Dropout was an instant classic and redefined hip hop almost immediately. Every song, and I mean every song, was as good as the best song on somebody else's album. And the best songs on College Dropout were hitting high notes that no one else was really close to. But it wasn't just that it was brand new good music, it was music that was redefining what was possible in hip hop. Kanye West was breaking kayfabe, and hip hop was being changed forever. Kanye broke the mold on what hip hop was and what a rap superstar looked like. He took the conscious rapper characteristics of thoughtfulness and introspection and blended them with bombast and drama of mainstream gangster rap. He had bangers that you could play in the club or the marching band or at church. There were no songs about selling drugs, really minimal overtures to misogyny and excess or drugs or violence. It wasn't clean per se. It wasn't Will Smith at the time wagging his finger at rappers about their gritty, profane content. It was just confidently doing its own thing. It was wholesome. It was sincere. It was real, realer than any rapper shouting, "I keep it real" at the time. And most significantly, it was music that spoke to a different experience of Black masculinity. It wasn't invincible, it was insecure. It wasn't dangerous, it was vulnerable. It wasn't bravado, it was introspection. In retrospect, you might say that it spoke to where Kanye sat, which is the legion of Black men who felt apart from what Black manhood was supposed to look like. Black boys and men who felt like they had to be forced into boxes in order to exist. It was really the first evidence of his future free thinker ethos. But for all of its introspection and sensitivity, it still had the gumption and balls and audacity to claim its space along the side of the Jay-Z's and the Nas's and eventually the 50 Cents of the time. Kanye's music was so audacious and had so much heart that any hate was whispers in the distance. For example, the best song on this album for me was Last Call, possibly the greatest last song on an album of all time. At the time, the last song on the album was usually the I Miss My Homie song or the super serious I'm the illest rapper ever track, or maybe every once in a while a diss track. But Kanye chose his last song as a preemptive victory lap, as if he already knew that he had made the impression he wanted. He was celebrating the success of an album that hadn't even been heard or released yet, and low-key throwing shade at the very label that had the nerve to make him wait in this long time just to get over. Kanye just knew he had made something incredible before it dropped. The song regales his journey to this point and how so few people had his back on the way there. It's a 12-minute long song with only the first 4 minutes being the song and the last 8 just being Kanye talking his shit, letting the world know just how he got to this point. And it's amazing. I remember sitting in my dorm room with my 2 best friends at the time, listening silently to this song over and over, not fully understanding everything, but recognizing that something special was occurring, that Kanye was breaking kayfabe. He was more himself than any rapper had ever probably been, and he was proving to the entire industry and the world in the process that we could be ourselves too. I really can't get across enough how refreshing and affirming this felt to me and almost every dude I knew at the time. Finally, we had an avatar, an icon that really represented who we actually were. Kanye had used his personal tragedy to manufacture his own push. And Kanye had went from the potential baby face that people liked on the low to the face of the game, the champion, the main eventer, the headliner. And for the next few years, he would have a run that probably would never be repeated. Only a year basically after the college dropout, Kanye would already have another record on deck. And this was in the middle of the breakup of Rockefeller Records, the company that defined the era of hip hop between the mid 90s and I guess 2004 was splitting between Jay-Z and Dame Dash. After Jay-Z took an executive position at Def Jam, which essentially made him Dame Dash's boss, all of the artists that were signed to Rockefeller had to choose which label they would go with. Out of loyalty, most of the rappers went with Dame, but Kanye went with Jay-Z, who, remember, was probably not the biggest fan and did not believe in Kanye as a rapper until the college dropout. It was Dame who made the decision to give him a shot. Put a pin in that. In August of this year, after most of the smoke had cleared on the breakup, Kanye released Late Registration, which somehow outdid College Dropout. Now, with all the clout to really call his own shots and a lack of 10 other label mates to distract him and use up his best beats, Kanye took it to a whole new level. As good as College Dropout was, it was still very safe. It was still mostly soul beats and a mixture of Kanye's label mates along with his neo soul peers. It was still a very standard rap album. But Late Registration was different. It was Kanye seeking to set himself apart from not just his previous label mates, but hip hop in general. Instead of working with rap producers, Kanye worked with John Bryan, who was a composer, which led to fewer soul beats and a more orchestral and melodic sound. It was hip hop, but not in the way that we usually understood it. It was different before we knew what different was. It evolved the ears and tastes of a whole generation of hip hop fans. But beyond the music, Kanye was pushing boundaries everywhere else with how black men showed up in society. Before College Dropout, Kanye was vibrant but subdued, awkward, unsure a lot of times. He was still acclimating to the reality that he had made it and was about to get his shot. But hitting the stage for the Grammys in that year where he was up for Best New Artist, we finally met the real Kanye that most of the world would love and some would hate for the next 10 years. We were getting the first black male megastar that cared more about embracing and living that moment than presenting a facade that he thought he was supposed to present due to kayfabe.
Y'all might as well get the music ready because it's finna take a while. It's my time and my moment, thanks to the fans, thanks to the accident, thanks to God, thanks to Rockefeller, Jay-Z, Dame Dash, G, my mother, Rhyme Fest, everyone that's helped me. And I plan to celebrate. I plan to celebrate and scream and pop champagne every chance I get, because I'm at the Grammys, baby. Everybody want to know what I would do if I didn't win. I guess we'll never know.
At this time, most rappers are still staying in their lanes. A lot of these dudes were just happy to make it, happy to be away from the streets. Many didn't even love rap or music as a whole. They didn't always have a lot to say outside of promoting their records. They didn't have much in the way of personality. There were a few characters of note, surely, and they tended to be the stars, but none of them had the personality of Kanye. For the most part, they were still trying to keep kayfabe, so showing as much passion and vulnerability and desire to be seen, to be noticed, to be celebrated. The fact that Kanye tried so hard and cared so much and wanted you to know that was a no-no. They couldn't do that. They had to be aloof. They had to be stoic. But Kanye, no. Kanye showed a lot of dudes that it was okay to express yourself, to be passionate, to be a fan, to speak your mind and not be afraid to ruffle feathers. And all of this came through only a few weeks after Late Registration dropped.
More profoundly devastating is the lasting damage to the survivors' will to rebuild and remain in the area. The destruction of the spirit of the people of southern Louisiana and Mississippi may end up being the most tragic loss of all.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Please call.
In the past few days,
when Kanye said George Bush didn't care about black people, he was legit living out a fantasy for black folks everywhere at the time. To not be afraid to speak truth to power, to say the thing that we all were saying amongst each other to the world as a whole. But the thing is, if you go back and watch this whole clip, you can tell that Kanye is clearly terrified. He wasn't that established yet. He wasn't Kanye yet. He wasn't Yeezy. He was just a popular rapper that MTV got to do this nice thing for Katrina victims. He was very much replaceable. He was risking a lot with this moment. Look at his breathing. He's nervous. He's probably realizing that this could be the end of the line. He stammers through his thoughts on the issue, probably both in the natural way that Kanye kind of has always stammered and was always a little loopy and erratic when he had to speak live, but also because, I mean, the balls, the audacity of this moment. And what's crazy is that only a few weeks before this, Kanye sat down with Sway for what probably would have been his most talked about TV moment of that year had it not been for the George Bush comment. In this interview, there's two significant moments I want to bring up. The first being a clip of Kanye West addressing homophobia in hip hop, which due to the baby's recent antics has been trending, and you've probably seen it pop up in the last couple of weeks.
That culture of me looking at my rappers out there, hip hoppers discriminate against gay people. I wanted to just come on TV and just tell my rappers, just tell my friends, like, yo, stop it, fam. Like seriously, that's really discrimination. To me, that's exactly what they used to do to black people. I'm just trying to tell people, just stop all that. In high school, be like, yo, you acting like, dawg, you gay? And I used to deal with that when I was in high school. And what happened is it made me kind of like homophobic, because it's like I would like go back and like question myself, like, damn, why does everybody else walk like this and I walk like this? So why?
By today's standards, Kanye isn't saying much, right? But for the time, for 2005, for a black man, this was a huge risk to take such a public stance and push at boundaries. So I really can't understate the risk he was taking here. Then he goes on to a segment that for the life of me, I cannot find a clip of. Maybe I'll find it and put it here between now and editing. But coming back to the point earlier about Kanye going with Jay-Z instead of Dame Dash, the man who signed him, Sway asks him if that was disloyal. And Kanye looks down as he thinks about the question and just says, yeah. He then goes on to admit that he made the decision that was best for himself. Again, Kanye did not care about kayfabe. The closest thing to kayfabe for Kanye was being true to his id at all times. Kanye liked dropping pipe bombs. He loved shoot interviews. You wonder if Kanye has ever had a publicist or media manager, because even before going off the rails in the Kanye era we're in now, Kanye was always unfiltered, always unafraid. He refused to be a humble black man, happy to be there. And he refused to allow you to not acknowledge how good he was. In reality, a lot of what is seen from this golden era of Kanye is everything he is today, just a bit less nonsensical. We are now in the Kanye Renaissance, where he is beloved both for his amazing music, which was crossing over in a way that no rapper before him had ever saw, but also in his huge celebrity status, which was very challenging to the status quo. Part of Kanye's appeal was the fact that his less gangster image made him more palatable and gave him more opportunities to attach to a wider audience. But he was so transgressive in all these other ways that it kind of evened out. By the time Kanye's third album came out, Graduation, the whole game was now shaped in his image. Baggy jeans were out, skinny jeans were in. And I never understand why like old dudes my age and older act like Gen Z started the skinny jeans phase when Kanye very clearly led that charge. Bright colors, urban fashion, high fashion, genre bending, pop aesthetic, excess. Kanye had broken open the packaging on black creativity in a way that wasn't thought possible. His success led to the likes of Lupe Fiasco, Kid Cudi, Wale, and yes, eventually Drake, to get a shot in hip hop, and not just to be cornered off into the backpacker conscious space, but to be the future stars of the rap game. Furthermore, the redefinition of hip hop and black masculinity that Kanye marked seemed to saturate the world around me. And maybe it's confirmation bias to censor a lot of this change on Kanye's presence. Maybe it's just my own maturing sense of adulthood and manhood that smoothed out the world's rough edges in my view. But I remembered entering into the world as a man much more assured of my own ability to chart my own path and be myself, based on this feeling that the cultural landscape was different than when it was when I was younger. It felt like black masculinity was different. And this isn't all Kanye, but he was like the score, the soundtrack to this time frame. Things weren't perfect, but damn if it didn't seem like things were looking up, which of course is the best time for the plot to take a turn. Graduation was such a perfect name for that album because it spoke to the fact that we were now going from Kanye as the upstart to Kanye as the patriarch of what rap was at the time. And in the music, you could hear Kanye speaking to the fact that it's now him and what he's doing, and that you can't tell him nothing. Probably the most affecting song once again on the album is the last song, Big Brother, which is a song Kanye wrote about Jay-Z. And when you reflect on all the ways in which Kanye has admired Jay-Z and all the ways in which Jay-Z low-key did Kanye wrong, is really a powerful and evocative song to listen to. And again, incredibly transgressive. The idea that a rap artist would dedicate a whole song, let alone a rap song, not to dissing another black man, but to telling another black man how you admire them and how you hurt them. It's profound even today. That type of song would never make the light of day. But here it was at the end of this album, this sentimental love note to his friend, this celebration of friendship and camaraderie. And this is how great stories are told, especially when you don't have the tropes of romance or supervillains, when you just have characters whose arcs and personalities speak to you and whose ambitions or actions or needs and desires within a story reflect the ambitions, actions, needs, and desires that you have as an individual. When you're emotionally connected to a character, you subsume yourself into their struggles and they become your own. Sometimes a change in a character is subtle, but you can usually tell when a swerve or turn is coming. And sometimes it's not so subtle. Sometimes you know where you can mark a huge change in a character. It's just usually when something so big happens that there's no way that the character can go back to being who they were before that moment, in or out of kayfabe. There's certain events that are of such a magnitude that the world is just different afterward. A nexus event, if you will. And all you can do after is wait to see how things change from that point on.
Told you. Told you. Tag team specialist. See, one without the other isn't any good. Oh, I knew he was going to.
Do y'all remember Yo Mama jokes? Yo Mama's so fat, I was outside driving while she was outside, and I had to swerve to miss her, and the car ran out of gas. Yo Mama's so ugly, when she was little, she had to trick or treat by phone. There's evidence to suggest that Yo Mama jokes go all the way back to Shakespeare and the Bible and shit, but they're known as Yo Mama jokes because they became staples in black communities in the art of signifying. Y'all didn't know I put some thought into my name, did you? When playing the Dirty Dozens or joning or roasting, cracking, signifying, whatever you may call it, there was always a clear line that you weren't supposed to cross unless you were willing to fight someone. And that was the line of joking about someone's mama, especially the mama of little black boys. To joke on someone's mother, you had to really know that person or you were about to start a fight. Even with your best friends, even if it was a slight joke, you had to really know a guy to make a Yo Mama joke. You had to know their mama. Why is this? Because for little black boys, mothers are sacred. And of course, mothers are sacred to everybody, right? But without going into the history of slavery and racial terrorism, I'll just say that for black mothers and black boys, there's a trauma bond that probably forms in utero. Historically, black men's attachment to their mothers and vice versa has been a point of both conflict as well as love and joy. That's why talking bad about a black boy's mother was rightfully met with direct action. You could deal with any indignation, but to allow someone to disrespect your mother, the only bond many black boys truly felt that they can rely upon, that was grounds for retribution. Thus, the loss of a mother, especially a good and supporting one, can be devastating in ways that are hard to describe. So when Kanye's mother died suddenly and tragically, it devastated him as it would anyone, but also in that unique space for Black men, it feels like the world collapsed for Kanye. Kanye was always a lot, and his mother was a key figure in keeping him in order. At the time, Kanye was surrounded by a protective circle of people who kept his ego in check and probably quietly managed his more erratic behavior. In the wake of this, also, Kanye broke up with his longtime girlfriend, Alexis. Kanye and Alexis had been dating since the early 2000s before Kanye became famous. And Alexis to this day still remains very private about her own life and her relationship with Kanye. Not much is known about their relationship, but one thing that I discovered in researching this is just how instrumental Alexis was to who Kanye is today as a fashion icon. Alexis herself was a fashion designer and is running a small boutique in relative obscurity. And at the same time, Kanye has become this fashion legend. But before meeting Alexis, Kanye was just a cooler Carlton Banks, maybe. He had this prep look thing going on based on his experiences in prep school, but also his experience working at The Gap. However, Alexis was who brought high fashion to Kanye as a theme. As their relationship evolved, so did Kanye's look. It was Alexis who first took Kanye to Paris and who was his first stylist. On top of this, Alexis was very close to Kanye's mother, but for whatever reason, they split in the year after Kanye's mother passed, likely due to the problems brought forth from Kanye's grief. I want to be careful here to not mythologize the value of Black women to Black men, because I think sometimes it gets to the point where we're trying to celebrate Black women, but it becomes dehumanizing and depersonalizing. It gets close to evoking this idea that Black women are solely responsible for building Black men up and that it's somehow their fault when we break down. That said, it's hard to ignore the clear moment in life where Kanye separated and went on a different path. And it's when these two Black women left his life. If you have to mark a point where Kanye West starts the process of going from a face to a heel, it's here. It's where he lost his anchor and his muse. This is the event that changed Kanye's story, the moment where we can begin to track Kanye from lovable underdog to the face of the industry to heel Kanye. And for all of Kanye's fans and supporters, this is the time frame that pops in our head that has brought us as low as we have been for the last almost decade. And it's also why we still empathize and hope for Kanye's eventual recovery. We appreciate that this inflection point is probably where Kanye made an even bigger impact on the culture and music and now also fashion. But what we see is a friend that we used to know, a family member that went through something substantial, something traumatic at a vulnerable time, and has never been the same since. I don't expect everyone to be on board with that rationale, and I don't think this excuses his behavior that he's been exhibiting for the last couple of years. If you ever ask, why do y'all still care about Kanye? Think of everything I've told you up to this point. If you've ever had a family member or a friend that's been through something or gets sick that changes them, if they're important to you, you hold out hope that they will eventually get better. You check on them and check for them whenever you can, praying for signs of progress. I'm not saying this is the right thing to do. It probably, especially at this point, very much isn't, especially considering the person at hand. And just to head this off, there's gonna be a criticism from some that we shouldn't be worshiping celebrities. And I think that's, I'm gonna be honest, kind of a dumb sentiment to put out there when you are trying to dictate how people respond to art. Art is supposed to change you. It's supposed to affect the way you see the world and, if possible, the way the world sees you. So when people latch on to old Kanye, to what Kanye did to the art form and culture of hip hop, this is not celebrity worship. This is us engaging with the reality of the world that was shaped by this particular figure in their art. And yes, for some of us, the toxic behavior that Kanye has exhibited has not been enough to completely sever and make us divest from hoping, praying, and wishing that that moment in time, that space can still be a real thing. All that said, make no mistake, the next phase of Kanye's career from then up until now is Kanye mostly as a heel, mostly as the bad guy. From this point on, Kanye would spiral more and more into the wildest of excesses and the depths of mental illness. And the roller coaster that is new Kanye is not for the faint of heart. But if you want to hear me talk about it, I'll holler at you in a couple of weeks in part 2 of this story. And that's all I got for today, y'all. Like, share, and subscribe, all the things you're supposed to do. Please check out my Patreon. I'm real close to being able to like fully invest in all this content creation stuff. Please watch my old stuff. That helps a lot. That helps the algorithm understand. And please, please, please click the bell. That's all I got for y'all. I really appreciate your time. Peace.